Hey guys, I'm Kevin Shaw, Editor-in-Chief of Mopar Connection Magazine. Hopefully many of you will recognize this absolutely gorgeous 1970 Plymouth Cuda convertible that we built from a bent-up, wrecked E-body into a true-to-factory spec, manual 4-speed shifted 426 HEMI-powered monster. No, we're not millionaires, and we never once tried to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. This really is a clone, or what we like to call a tribute. We found a wadded-up drop-top Barracuda out of Florida, and we turned it into this inviolate E-body that you see before you. Originally a 318 automatic, Mopar Connection Magazine's former technical editor Mike Wilkins fully restored it and rebuilt this car from quite literally a bare body. If you haven't seen the full documented build, we've got dozens of articles published on the magazine that we'll link up in the corner right here. Named the Comeback Cuda, this 70 Plymouth Cuda convertible has been one of our most successful project cars that we've ever tackled, and has been an absolute resource to a lot of you guys looking for exact factory replication and restoration. So if you haven't already, we strongly recommend that you guys go and check it out. It might be worth your time. While the wrecked Cuda was being straightened at the installation center in Cleveland, Georgia, Mike set about completely rebuilding the 426 Elephant back to factory specifications. Not only was the car to be as close to factory stock, but the HEMI as well. Now, building a numbers matching HEMI engine is not exactly something a guy can do on a regular budget. And unfortunately, the HEMI that we had gotten our hands on was certainly not a numbers matching motor for this 1970 Plymouth. In fact, the block was off by a couple years, and we had a mixed match set of heads. That didn't really matter to us as long as everything was straight and true. But the 426 HEMI that we had gotten our hands on had lived a pretty hard life of drag racing and competition for several years before we had gotten our hands on it. It was our goal to bring it back to a as factory specification and get as close as we could to the original numbers that Chrysler had advertised. The crank had once been lightened for lightweight connecting rods in a previous life, so it needed to be rewelded to balance out the factory rods. Due to being once a drag-raced engine, the crank required being turned 30 thousandths. Unfortunately, the factory cast iron block had lived a long life of hard driving, which required the factory 4 1/4 cylinder to be bored 60 over, equaling 4.310. While this forced us to run larger diameter pistons, we retained the as factory 75cc dome, ensuring that we get as close to factory spec as possible. The cylinder heads were gone through by Frank at Tommy's Auto Machine and Parts in Springfield, Tennessee, lapping the valves and installing new guides and seals. Our HEMI's heads had a CC of 168 compared to the factory suggested 170cc, meaning that they had been decked at least once in the past. Since we wanted to get back to Ma Mopar specifications, we opted for a thicker copper gasket, 40 thousandths thick, that when combined with the 168cc heads gave us a compression ratio of 9.6 to 1, which was right where we wanted it to be. The last variation from factory was the use of ARP studs for the mains, as well as ARP hardware for the rods and head bolts. While not stock, we also understood that the better hardware meant more peace of mind. One crucial part was the camshaft. We couldn't find any markings on it, making it a mystery apart from being a solid flat tappet. We had to measure it on a lathe using a dial indicator, and thankfully it came out almost exact to factory. The intake measured at 490 inch, and the exhaust measured at 481 inch with a duration of 284. The rocker ratio was 1.57 intake and 1.52 exhaust. The lobes of the cam were like new, as were the solid lifters, so we put them back in. After a quick half an hour to get the HEMI on the dyno at Tommy's Auto Machine, Frank ripped off a handful of poles. We never got the Elephant up into the 6,000s, but did find that Ma Mopar was certainly sandbagging on a few of her numbers. At 4,000 RPM, the HEMI snapped off a stump pulling 490.9 pound-feet of torque, exactly as advertised. But what wowed us was the 452.7 horsepower at 5,500 RPM, a full 27.7 ponies over the advertised 425. And as always, this was done on straight out of the pump 93 octane. We didn't do any fancy corrections or fiddling with the barometric pressures. In all fairness, we didn't spend much time adjusting for optimal numbers, and we possibly could have eked out a few more ponies had we really tried. But we were very happy with the results that this factory 426 cranked out. Certainly a rowdier camshaft and some hotter ignition timing would have woken this beast up, but we weren't going drag racing with this one. We just wanted to honor the legendary HEMI by showing the world how potent that these pachyderms really were. I'm Kevin Shaw, and you've been watching Mopar Connection Magazine. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, leave a comment, and maybe share it with your friends. It'll definitely help us grow the channel. And if you want more awesome Mopar content, please make sure to visit us at www.moparconnectionmagazine.com, where new articles are written and published every single day, Monday through Friday, entirely subscription free to you. We'll see you there.